Welcome into a Week 4 edition of the Bird and the Bear podcast. Michael Knauff, Cameron Carriglio, getting prepped for a pretty relatively loaded Week 4 after kind of a down Week 3, but there's plenty of action this week, Cameron, coming off a week last Saturday that, is kind of the status quo was kept for the most part.
Especially in like the top 15, top 20. And we saw a couple fringe top 25 teams lose, but doesn't really have any effect on the larger picture. The top 10 literally stayed the exact same.
With the exception of Utah jumping Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
Just because Michigan had a bye.
Yeah, just because Michigan was idle. But top 9 stayed exactly the same. That's going to stop happening at some point. Because it feels like every week there's just been shuffling within the top 10. Because I don't think anybody that was in the original top 10's lost yet, have they?
I do not believe so.
Or was it Oregon?
Oregon was 11th. Oregon was 11th, yeah.
So, yeah, there are really no new entrants except for Utah. But this week, I think there could be some upsets just because there are a lot of tight lines.
Yeah, there's definitely some volatility this week, and we could see some shakeups. But Week 3 really provided some interesting storylines, despite it not being the most exciting week. And really, the biggest news probably from last week is from Florida. Kyle Trask is now the guy after Felipe Franks dislocates his ankle and now has to have major surgery on it, and he's going to be out for at least 6 months. So it's Kyle Trask now.
It's early to say this, but I feel more comfortable with Trask than I did with Franks. I felt like every time Franks got a hint of pressure in his face, he bailed out. He didn't really stay in the pocket very well, didn't really stand tall. On the play he got hurt, you saw that. He just kind of bailed out of that play really quickly. I think Trask brings a little bit of, like, he's relaxed. And I feel like our play calling kind of helped that too. It was a lot of almost like air raid, spread it out principles that we were doing. I would actually really like us to do that again this week because it makes up for an offensive line that hasn't been stellar at all so far.
To put it mildly.
But that being said, they need the run game now, I think, more than with Franks. Because if Trask proves that he can be that go-to quarterback, he can't move like Franks can, which isn't saying very much. Franks wasn't exactly mobile, but he tried often. I feel like Trask isn't going to be as willing to sacrifice his body like that just because he knows that behind him is a redshirt freshman, behind that is
a wide
receiver.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see what he can do against Tennessee. That secondary hasn't been great, and I think we'll be able to run the ball a little more effectively because they've been getting run on. So
yeah, and one thing with Trask is the way I kind of like describe between him and Felipe is that if you took Trask's head and put it on Felipe's body, you'd have the perfect quarterback.
Yeah,
really. But I feel that Trask's physical ability makes up more than what Felipe's football IQ does, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And Trask, he makes quick decisions. He's going to stay in the pocket a bit longer. I think he might take more sacks in the pocket than Felipe does just because he's not willing to scramble as much, which, for better or for worse, that's just how he's going to be. And Mullen has said the offense really isn't going to change a whole lot because Trask, whereas he might not have the kind of galloping speed that Felipe has, Trask is still 240 pounds, and he's pretty stocky, so he's going to be able to get you that 5 yards, on a quarterback dive that you need.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if we end up taking fewer sacks simply because his football IQ is higher.
He's
going to get the ball out. I think he's going to throw it away more often than Felipe does. He's not going to make that rolling out to his left, throwing to the end zone, and basically throwing a fly ball to the safety. He doesn't strike me as the type of quarterback that's ever going to make that kind of mistake.
And there was one play in the Kentucky game that kind of stands out, that kind of really makes your point. There was a design rollout to the right, and Lucas Kroll just snuck out the backside, and it was a design throwback. And Trask saw that it was covered, and instead of trying to actually force the ball to Kroll, he just kind of lofted really high over Kroll's head to where Kroll either going to make a heck of a diving catch on it or it's going to fall incomplete.
And Trask did make a few errors. The 2-point conversion could have been returned for 2 points. And then that little rollout to the left could have been picked off. It would have been a really nice catch, but it could have been picked off by the safety. But those are the kind of throws that don't bite you too much. And once again, first game, fourth quarter, in a game you're losing, you're going to take a little bit more chances, I think.
I mean, when you score 19 unanswered, hey, you
it's hard to argue with.
Yeah, you can't really really pick.
Kentucky didn't have a great defensive quarter. I think their play calling was poor defensively.
They got soft, very
I
soft.
think they were tired. I think their front seven got really tired. That's why they weren't bringing pressure.
Which is weird because Florida hardly had the ball in the third quarter. Florida hardly touched the ball really all game. I mean, they had probably less than 65 plays again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think once we had a few drives, though, it started to beat them down a little bit. I mean, we finished with 438 yards. Granted, 76 of that came on a play we shouldn't have even scored on. Hammond should have gone down.
Fair, yeah.
But you can't tell a guy to not do that. It's really hard to beat that into someone's head, and you can't expect that. But it was nice getting that little charity touchdown at the end.
It felt good. It kind of made it was better than a 1-point win. That's for sure.
And I called that jet sweep. You weren't here.
Honestly, it's weird because I
figured we were either going to throw or jet.
I thought the same thing because right when Ham went in motion, I'm like, there's no way he's a decoy, and
we couldn't run up the middle again. We would have gotten 0 yards like we did all night.
But for Trask, honestly, Tennessee and then Towson is the perfect way to start before Auburn in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I think this is really going to allow Trask to settle into the offense and just get some general I'm not saying he's not confident now, but just grow more comfortable and kind of have, redevelop that poise. I mean, obviously, if you're paying attention, he hasn't started since his freshman year in high school. So,
behind Garrett King, who plays tonight,
which we will talk about a little bit later. And speaking of another Florida school, UCF railroaded Stanford and put on an offensive clinic. And you texted me about this, basically saying it's time to basically admit that UCF is probably legit.
I mean, they're going out there with a quarterback they weren't even sure would play this year. And he jumped Winbush and Daryl Mack and then proceeded to throw for 347 yards against what is generally a fairly stout Stanford secondary. Maybe not this year, because Keaton Slovis looked like an all-star against them and looked pretty bad against BYU. So maybe Stanford secondary is not very good, and maybe the Stanford team is not very good. But at the same time, you can't really blame UCF for that. When this game was scheduled, Stanford was, always winning 8, 9, 10 games.
At least, they were always, contending in the Pac-12.
They might be a 4-win team this year, honestly. Stanford looks really bad to me. But, I mean, they still torched them. It was deep ball. Especially in the first half. It was like UCF was running on air. And defensively, they let up a little bit in the second half. UCF did, allowed some points, but
basically garbage
the game was
time.
never in doubt. First quarter was 21-0, and you never got the feeling that Stanford was going to be able to claw back into that game at all.
Yeah, and I honestly don't see UCF. They might lose a game this year, but I think this week against Pitt is...
It won't be Pitt.
Ooh.
Pitt hasn't scored a point outside of the second quarter this year. I'm sorry, no, they have not scored a touchdown outside the second quarter this year.
Oh, wow.
3 games, they've only scored touchdowns in the second quarter. That's not going to beat UCF.
Can we just talk about how Pitt gave away the game to Penn State, essentially?
I don't understand trying to kick it there on 4th and goal from the 1, 6 minutes left. I mean, I know you've had trouble getting anything between the tackles, but you got to try something.
You're down there. You haven't been down there all game. You have to. Because if you don't get it, then you put Penn State on their 1-yard line, and your front 7 has been stuffing Penn State the entire game, except for one
Aside
run.
From a few big plays.
Yeah.
A few big plays. I don't know. I like Pat Narduzzi. I think he was very daring for the majority of the game. But then he does that. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense. That was a good game, though. That was actually a hell of a game.
Pickett,
really fun 17-10
Kenny Pickett
game.
is fun to watch.
Yeah, I think he's catching his stride with Mark Whipple, or vice versa. I think Mark Whipple's understanding what he's good at. Now scoring points is the next step.
Yeah, Pitt just needs some offense, and I think because defensively they're solid. I don't think UCF is going to have as easy of a time scoring on them, but we'll talk a little bit more about it later. But I think UCF. I don't think UCF will cover in this game.
I think their 30-point streak might end, but I think they'll win.
I agree with. Okay, I'll take that.
28-20 or something.
Something like that.
17, something like that.
I'd agree with that. But aside from the two Florida teams, just some kind of noobs that made the top 25 immediately found themselves out. Maryland, USC with basically Maryland. That was an ugly loss to Temple.
Temple's good. I think they're a pretty skilled team. I think they'd be a mid-tier ACC team if they were in the conference. Probably mid-lower in Big Ten. What I found just perplexing was Maryland's inability to score in the red zone.
They got stopped on goal to go, 3-4 times?
I think it was a 5-point game at this point, maybe even less. And Temple had a 7-yard punt from their own 3. And Maryland could not punch it in.
Well, that's the thing.
And they got a punt return inside the 5 and could not punch it in.
Well, that's the thing. The possession before, they got stuffed on goal to go, turnover on downs, and that punt happened. And then they got stuffed again on goal to go, down 5. When you have Josh Jackson, who's can run.
Not really anymore. He's pretty slow now.
He's a little stiff.
He got slow and kind of fat.
But, with the running back core you have, with Anthony McFarland in your backfield.
And Javon Leake and the other guy, Tayon Fleet Davis.
How do you not? It's baffling.
Well, and it wasn't like Jackson was playing well. He was 15 of 35 for $183 in the game. I don't understand why they kept putting it into his hands.
That's not the strength of that Maryland offense anyway.
I mean, it can be, but he wasn't playing well. Don't force it. And honestly, I mean, they had 4 points off safeties.
They only scored
13
I think that's
offensive
really funny.
points.
That's really funny.
To run the clock out, Temple took a safety on the final play. They rolled back and just fell in the end zone.
Yeah, so us talking about how Maryland's legit, that's kind of
That'll
out
hurt
the
your
window.
Points per game.
Yeah. And then USC, is BYU just that gritty, or is...
BYU's really gritty. Kalani Sitake has a really gritty team. But that's inexcusable for USC. Graham Harrell did not call a good game, in my opinion. Once Slovis threw a couple picks, it felt like he got shy. And he admittedly has 13 plays in that playbook. And 2 or 3 of those are run plays. It's a little zone to the left with Malapei. He did it 15 out of 20 plays at one point. And it worked for a bit, and then BYU started keying on it. And even when that stopped working, he was just bullheaded and stopped throwing the ball. Keaton Slovis had 132 yards passing in the final 3 quarters.
If you're running an air raid,
attempts.
That's inexcusable.
And it was working when they were throwing. But he was, I think, 11 of 15 for 150, a touchdown and 2 picks in the first quarter. And then the play calling just got really weird. And BYU plays a bit of ball control. It seems like they have the ball a lot, and they did.
They're very deliberate. They take their time on offense.
And they were moving pretty well. But it was just one of those games where I never felt like BYU really had a chance, and all of a sudden we went to overtime, and they won.
I mean, obviously they came back on Tennessee, but even against Utah, if you take away really the last quarter and a half, they played with the Utes. I mean, they threw a pick 6 in the first half, which was the only touchdown that Utah got in the first half.
They had a pick 6 to seal the game late.
Yeah, and BYU turned the ball over twice in the red zone, I think, in the first half.
Yeah, they were hanging in the first. I think Utah's like a better BYU. They play kind of similar styles, especially defensively.
Well, Huntley is absurdly efficient.
Yeah. 15 to 19, 282 last week, 4 touchdowns.
He actually has the highest adjusted completion percentage in the nation right now. So,
followed by UTSA's quarterback. I don't really like that stat very much. There are some mediocre to poor quarterbacks on that list.
That's fair. Yeah. But Utah is defensively is legit. They've allowed 29 points this season in 3 games.
Yeah, they're good.
But a feel-good is Kansas, the state of Kansas. Kansas beat Boston College. Was their first Power 5 road win since 2012, I think it was.
It's been a long time. What's amazing to me is that they lost 12-7 to Coastal Carolina at home the week before.
Yeah. If you're BC, how embarrassing is that?
I mean, at the end of the first half, Kansas had the ball, I think their own 12, and just did a little zone handoff to Khalil Herbert. I'm sorry, no, they were their own 8. Took it 87 yards, and they kicked a field goal at the end of the first half. How do you let that happen? I think BC just came in lackadaisical. I don't think they were coached well. They scored 7 points after the first quarter.
Which for a Steve Adazio team is really weird to say that they weren't coached well.
Yeah, normally they're at least prepared for teams that are worse than them.
Yeah.
And kind of take care of business. That was just odd. Kansas looked competent. And I liked Miles' remark about going out to the bars in Boston and celebrating that night.
Yeah.
Who knows if they did, but that's still pretty awesome.
That's funny. Yeah. And then Kansas State goes into Starkville, and they looked legitimately good. They ran the ball pretty effectively.
It's not shocking to me that they've been good so far this year because they no longer have Methuselah as their head coach. I think when you're 98 years old, you kind of start to lose the locker room a little bit. Like, I don't know if he did, but I feel like you definitely delegate more to your assistant coaches, and maybe that dynamic with, like, your close head coach-player relationship doesn't really take place.
There's too much of a gap there.
I feel like he's kind of glued to that team. And they look like what they should have been last year. Like, they really have the same roster. And I think they look really good. I think it would not shock me if they pull what Iowa State did a couple years ago in the Big 12 and knock off, like, 2 top 4 teams.
They just play spoiler, essentially, and finish 9-3.
Yeah.
You know.
I think they win 7 games at minimum just because there's a lot of parity in that area of the Big 12. Because now West Virginia looked good last week. I was chalking them up to 3 wins and calling it a day.
And then they go in.
And now I'm like, well, they might make a bowl.
Yeah, they go in hanging 40
I thought Texas Tech would blow out Arizona. They looked like crap. Now Alan Bowman's hurt. I think you might have like a Pac-12 situation with the Big 12 this year, where like 5 teams go 5-7.
Yeah, they're just going to beat each other at this point.
Now you have Kansas looking competent. That's going to be a fun race.
I mean,
just to see what shenanigans take place.
It's basically a race for, like, once you get past, like, the 4th or 5th spot in the Big 12, it's kind of...
Because they have Baylor and ISU. Like, I just mentioned a bunch of teams that are pretty much equal.
Yeah, they're all...
So that'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see. And now that we're a quarter of the way through the season, there's been kind of some trends that have developed through 3 games. And I just think it's laughable that Michigan State still can't play offense.
They need to clean house. I don't know if that means fire D'Antoni or just force him to fire all of his friends. Because clearly the reshuffle of the offensive staff did not work. And frankly, it's embarrassing that they still... Like, just that whole last part of that game. The 12 men on the field, because they wasted all their timeouts on defense, got the 12 men, and lined up that way. It wasn't like someone was trying to run off the field, which, I mean, I guess is still not great, but it's a little more forgivable. They legitimately lined up with 12 people. That's just bad coaching. And they had to rush out there because the coaches couldn't decide whether they wanted to try to take a shot or try to get to the sideline or spike it and kick a field goal. So they waited for 15 seconds, came in, got 12 men, missed the field goal. How do you allow 10 points at home and lose? And they had over 400 yards of offense. Lewerke threw for 291, and their leading rusher had, I think, 120, 107, something like that.
Jesus. Hats off to Herm Edwards and to Sun
Yeah,
Devils.
I mean, they've allowed 21 points this year. They're the last team in the FBS that has not allowed more than 1 touchdown in the game. Or more than 7 points in the game. And their offenses looked like a dumpster fire.
It's been horrendous, yeah. They scored, 19 against Sacramento State, 10, obviously this week.
30 against Kent State. And the 19 on Sacramento State was because of a late, Benjamin getting loose and doing his thing.
Yeah, and that's good.
I mean, honestly, they could still win 8 or 9 games because that defense is really good, and I assume that offense will eventually take off.
And playing the Pac-12 South kind of helps that a little bit.
Of a division.
Yeah.
But.
And speaking of the Pac-12, is the Pac-12 actually deep, or is there just a lot of really mediocre teams in there?
I think this year it's deep. I think Arizona's improved. I know they lost to Hawaii, but I think that's a little bit of a fluke because they looked pretty competent against what I think is eventually going to be a pretty well-coached Texas Tech team.
They played sloppy in the first quarter,
yeah,
though.
Texas Tech's a year away, maybe even 2. But it's still a good win. I mean, their defense looked tight, which it didn't against Northern Arizona. If they can keep that momentum, I think they'll be okay. I think Arizona State, like we just mentioned, is going to be pretty solid. Utah's very good. Cal is essentially Arizona State senior. They play a little bit better offense and about the same level of defense. Another school we eventually might be talking about firing their entire offensive staff because I don't know how many years they can continue to do this.
Yeah. It's impressive, though.
Good.
Yeah.
USC's not nearly as good as they should be, but they're not bad. Really, I think UCLA might go winless. I think Oregon State could beat them.
Ooh, that says a lot right there. Yeah.
It's plausible.
I mean, they've won how many combined games the past 2 seasons? 5, 6?
Oregon State?
No, UCLA.
Oh, they made a bowl 2 years ago.
Okay. That was Chip Kelly's first year then, okay.
No, this is Chip Kelly's second year. They were 6-7 the year before he came.
You're so right. I don't know why I'm blanking.
With Devon Modster.
Okay. But yeah, so Kelly's kind of
Yeah.
his offense is a little outdated.
Yeah, I mean, they've scored 14 points each game. I think Oregon State can outscore them.
I mean, with Hodges out wide and who's the quarterback?
Jamar Jefferson at running back. Luton might not even be their starter by then. There's been, amongst their meager fan base, there have been calls for Tristan Gebbia, the Nebraska transfer. But I think they're on the right track, Oregon State.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going in the right direction,
Colorado
too.
lost to Air Force, but I don't think they're a bad team. I think Air Force might actually be very good.
Air Force goes in waves. They're kind of...
Yeah, it feels like every other year they go 5-7, and then every other
9-3,
year they
4.
compete for their division.
And then, obviously, Oregon offensively has picked up some momentum.
Yeah, Herbert, 10 touchdowns, no picks in his last 2 games.
It's not too bad.
No.
And I will say Washington kept Hawaii's offense in check. They did not let...
I mean, we know Washington's defense is good, though.
Oh, yeah, no, they have a very underrated defense, I feel. I mean, obviously, yeah, we know it's talked about. They're, pretty stout, but I feel it's pretty overlooked in terms of nationally of how good they are season to season.
And, of course, Washington State. I think Leach has actually found a true rhythm there, and I think they're going to win 10 games a year plus for as long as
I'm
they have a
very excited for next week's matchup with Utah, between Washington State and Utah.
I think they'll lose.
I do, too.
They don't tend to play very well against elite defenses because Washington, 6 years in a row now, has pretty much embarrassed them. But they did beat a pretty good Utah team last year and were able to score. So, who knows?
It'll be fun. Yeah, I mean, that's a week away, though.
Yeah.
Other big storyline is the SEC East and all the injuries. So we already talked about Felipe Franks going down, but you have Helinski at South Carolina taking over Jake Bentley, and then
Really well, by the way.
I thought he looked... I know they got lost by 20 plus to Bama, but I thought he looked pretty good.
He got inefficient towards the end of the game, but I thought the first half he looked solid.
Play calling changed a bit. It was
It had to.
It was
I
safe.
was still impressed.
No, yeah, I mean, he ended up with over 300.
Yeah, 324. Trash drive at the end, but still got 324.
Hey, they had a backdoor cover, though.
It did.
Alabama was 25 and a half.
Yeah, they were.
And then South Carolina got that touchdown late. It was 24, so...
There's Terry Wilson, too.
Yeah, and Sawyer Smith, I thought he looked good in the first half.
Way better in the first half.
Yeah, he was efficient.
He got a little desperate in the second half at times. That pick to
Sean Davis.
that was bad. That was like an accidental throwaway that he kind of missed.
It was either that or a miscommunication with Bowden.
Yeah. Well, no, you're right. I think he motioned that Bowden was supposed to run a post corner. Still, might have been picked. That just wasn't good ball placement.
No, not at all.
Almost like he kind of pulled it back as he was throwing it and didn't.
But he realized it
manage
as
to.
he was throwing it,
And then obviously the Hail Mary pick, whatever.
like that doesn't really count.
The red zone pick wasn't great. Overall, I think he looked poised. He threw a couple darts.
Yeah,
really nice throws.
And Kentucky's good. Kentucky, if Terry Wilson was still, I'd say they're better with Wilson. I don't think there's a massive drop off with Sawyer Smith.
They're more dynamic with Wilson.
Yeah,
But I don't know. I think their points per game might look similar. I just think their yardage percentage splits are going to be a little bit different.
because with Wilson, obviously you have to worry about him running the ball. I think Smith is a better thrower,
Yeah.
and if they get Rose and Smoke really going, then I think that offense can. I think Kentucky can still win 9 games.
Oh, yeah.
And
It would be great for us if they did.
yeah, no, I mean,
I'm fine with it. As long as Cash Daniel gets suspended by the SEC.
Oh God! Don't even get me started on that. I mean,
We don't have time to talk about that.
God, it's pathetic.
If you haven't seen it on Twitter, look it up.
Just look up Cash Daniel, Kash.
Or Libgator, the Twitter account that kind of has the whole running thread going.
It's pretty bad. And then lastly, the fourth storyline we kind of want to touch on before we get to this coming week's games is Oklahoma's offense is not skipping a beat. If anything, they might be better than they have in the past 2 seasons.
I think they might be better, and I think their defense is better than anything they've had since I can remember, really. I know they haven't even gotten into conference play yet, so it's a little tough to say this, but I just don't see any 59, 56 games from them this year. And it very well might happen, but they look a little better.
Maybe against Texas.
And I'm going to go off on a mini tangent. I think this year might finally be the year where you could make a case for an expanded playoff. Because I haven't bought that there have been more than maybe 5 teams worthy of being in. But this year, I think you have 6 teams right now, like the top 6 currently ranked top 6.
So Bama, Clemson, Georgia, LSU, Oklahoma, and
Ohio State.
Ohio State, okay.
Could all feasibly deserve to be there. With the addition of, gonna hate to say this, but at some point I think you do have to give UCF a shot. And then your 8th would be whoever's left.
It could be Texas, Florida, Utah,
Texas.
Michigan.
It could be a variety. Notre Dame.
Yeah, Washington, or, it could be anyone. I agree with your point about UCF. I mean, at some point you got to give credit that they haven't lost a regular season game since 2016.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to give at least at some point the credit for that. And I still don't think if UCF goes undefeated this year, they make the playoffs.
No, I don't think so either.
Unless there's only 1 or 2 undefeated teams, and UCF has to win every game by at least 20 points.
Yeah, style points matter.
They have to blow people up. Like, they can't pull what they did against Memphis last year.
Because people looked at those Memphis wins as marks against them.
Yeah.
Whether that's right
or
or wrong.
Or Temple. They can't allow 40 points to Temple.
Yeah.
That can't happen. But back to Oklahoma, Hurts is averaging over 400 yards by himself of offense.
And that's not throwing. He's only throwing for like 290-something. So what does that tell you? That's craziness. He hasn't played a full game yet. He hasn't needed to.
It's ridiculous. And he's on pace. It's because Oklahoma's played 14 games in each of their last 2 seasons when Baker Mayfield and Murray broke the single-season record for most total yards. And Hurts is on pace for 5,600 yards, which would break that record.
Yeah. Insane.
We talked about in our very first podcast that we thought that, yeah, Hurts might put up numbers and be prolific, but he would be no Kyler Murray. But we're kind of eating our words at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's doing a little bit differently. I think he'll eventually actually throw for more yards because they'll probably need him to play a couple full games at some point. Because this kind of happened early with Murray as well, where he didn't really get his stride going passing the ball until I would say week 4.
It was until they really got in conference play.
Yeah, like he threw for under 200 a couple times early in the season. I think against UCLA he had like 210. Army, they had like 4 drives all game, but he had like 190. That's not going to happen with Oklahoma this year because they're already through that part of the schedule. And I think he's going to just light up the Big 12.
Yeah, considering how porous most defenses are in the Big 12, I'm really excited to see what he can do. And gosh, I cannot wait. I know it's like a preseason storyline, but man, it's going to be Bama and Oklahoma in a playoff, and that's just going to be maybe the most watched college football game of all time.
Yeah. So I just did some math right now just because I was curious. Anthony Gordon for Washington State, if he keeps up his current pace, in a 13-game season would throw for 5,752 yards. That's if they don't make the Pac-12 title, in which case he could break 6,000.
Has anyone broken 6,000?
No, never.
I mean, it's very feasible considering...
I think the record's 58-33 by B.J. Simmons.
Yeah, let's Google that, yeah. Because if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be Anthony Gordon. And
well, this year, yeah. Who knows?
Down the road, yeah.
It is actually B.J. Simmons, 58-33 in 2003.
Why do you know this?
I don't know. That was his only year starting, too. Fun fact. Graham Harrell, 2007, second. Then Case Keenum, Colt Brennan, Ty Detmer, David Klingler, Graham Harrell, Derek Carr, Paul Smith. Only 15 guys have ever broken 5,000, actually, ever.
It's a shorter season. It's tougher.
Yeah, still, though, the air raids come to such prominence. It's kind of surprising.
Yeah. But at the same time, though, the air raid compensates for the run game, So there's a lot of, 4 or 5 yard hitch routes
and
that are
defenses
completed.
have kind of acclimated a little bit.
There's only so much you can adjust to it because you can't defend a 5-yard hitch every time without giving up something deep.
Yeah.
So by default, you're going to get yards and you're going to get completions. It's just sustaining drives is the key, really, with that.
Which is, Hawaii doesn't run an air raid, but they actually struggled with that against Washington. Even though they only were outscored, I think, by 4 points in the second half in that game.
I think, but Washington put the game away in the first half.
Yeah, but they scored on their starters a little bit in the second half. I think Hawaii's actually decent, but that's
neither
here nor there.
They'll be fine in the Mountain West. So we're going to move on now to Cameron's hot takes.
Just stop doing this.
I think it's funny.
The Indiana-Ohio State one didn't look too bad for the first quarter and a half.
When Indiana went down to the field, I was like, oh, maybe Cameron's onto something here. And then J.K. Dobbins happened.
Yeah.
So you're 0 for 2. You're very cold.
I was ignorant of J.K. Dobbins' stats against Indiana going into that game, or I probably would have picked differently. He shredded them his entire career.
And J.K. Dobbins, he's acknowledged as a very good running back, but I think he's not
elite.
I think he's not given the kind of credit that he deserves.
No.
I think he's best running back Ohio State has in Zeke.
I'm gonna say hot take this week: BYU over Washington.
Man, that's a like a 5-alarm fire hot take.
Although Oklahoma State over Texas is calling my name a little bit.
Oklahoma State has beaten
That's a sexy one, though.
They've
I've heard that
they've
a
beaten
lot.
Texas for like the past 3-4 straight seasons.
Yeah.
So, and Texas is only a 6-point favorite.
I think people know that this actually is a very good Oklahoma State team that I'm a little surprised isn't ranked. They have the leading rusher in the NCAA and the leading receiver in the NCAA.
Chuba
right now.
Hubbard.
Chuba.
I love that name.
Chuba was the reason I lost fantasy last week. And Spencer Sanders at quarterback, I know they haven't had to open it up too much with him and throw too much, but when they really get that going with his legs and Hubbard and Tylan Wallace, that's a freaky good offense.
He's a
freshman.
That's a nasty trio.
I think within the next 3 years, because I'm not sure how Sanders projects at the next level. We might see him for 4 years ostensibly. They might be like top 4, top 5 prominent like they were back with like Whedon. That'd be cool to see Oklahoma State.
That would be fun. It's fun to watch them be good when like them and Oklahoma are elite.
They're likable.
How can you hate Oklahoma State unless you're an Oklahoma?
But even then, that
Man.
rival's not crazy.
It's like the most lopsided
Vehement.
rivalry maybe in college. Oklahoma State just is on the cusp every single year of knocking them off. It's actually funny that we're talking about Oklahoma State because I actually had to go through. I actually wrote a piece earlier in the week about Mason Rudolph.
He was so good in college.
And
He was
I
obscene.
was looking through his passing records at Oklahoma State, and he holds 5 of the 6 major passing records at
that
at
game
that school.
against that game against Pitt.
He
I
threw
think
for like
it was
570.
2 years.
or something like
He
that.
threw for like about that many yards, but he threw for like 410 in the first half. It was just ridiculous.
It was
It seemed like he did that on a semi-regular basis, where you just check the box score and just go, "What? Oh my god!"
Yeah, and Brandon Whedon is second, I think, all time in passing for them.
Yeah,
And he's like
way behind.
4,000, almost 5,000 yards behind Mason Rudolph.
Well, Rudolph was 3.5 year starter.
Yeah, no, he had a longer time, as their starting quarterback, but still,
Yeah, craziness.
yeah. And it's funny. It's fun to see that Rudolph is now back with James Washington in Pittsburgh.
I love James Washington in college.
Oh man, he was a
He
monster.
played like he was 6'5", and the dude's like 2 inches smaller than me.
Yeah, he's 6'2", and he's like 220
Is he even
pounds.
6'2"? I thought he was 6 foot or 6'1".
He's short, yeah, but he's a big body guy. It's like Charles Barkley,
Yeah,
just a wide
they threw
dude.
jump balls to him, and he'd go up and get him.
Yeah,
He was impressive in college. I
was
was
a lot of fun
surprised
to
if he
watch.
just all of a sudden lights up for 1,000 yards.
yeah. No, I think him and Juju in Pittsburgh could be a good combination. But this isn't a pro football podcast,
No.
so all right.
I
So
don't
you
even watch pro football.
yeah, you're not even gonna watch the Jaguars game tonight. And you're a Jags fan.
I'm watching this game.
Houston Tulane. We're on to the games now for this week, and this is gonna be fun. Because
Yeah, I
Houston's
actually-
offense, Tulane's defense.
And Tulane's offense.
Yeah, they've
I
put up.
really like Tulane here.
Is it tonight they're wearing those powder blue uniforms?
Yes.
Oh, those things.
They
are...
can't lose in those.
If
That's against the rules.
If you haven't seen Tulane's powder blue uniforms they're wearing tonight, you have to search them because they are some of the most beautiful uniforms maybe in all of football history.
Someone commented they looked like UNC with green stripes, and that kind of put a damper on it for me a little bit. But they're still very nice.
They're very nice. Yeah,
I like Tulane.
They're a 5-point favorite. What do you guys like a score prediction here?
Like 31-24, 31-28.
Okay, because
I
Houston.
don't think it's going to be a crazy shootout, just because Houston hasn't shown that that's the style they're playing.
I mean, we thought that last week's game against Washington State would be that, and they dropped 24.
Yeah, that
on
was
the
a
Cougars.
good game, but it wasn't up and down the
Electric.
field.
Yeah, it wasn't like what the over-under indicated it would be.
And I talked about this with you, that I'm not sure that Daniel Holgerson's truly figured out how to use De'Aaron King the best yet so far, because he's literally thrown for 408 yards through 3 games, not per game, which I thought might be the case. And that's very surprising to me. And at some point, they're going to have to throw a little bit, because they might lose more games than they want to if they don't get him going quickly.
And this thing, Holgerson's really never had like a quarterback like D'Eriq King. I mean, Will Greer, mobile but not a runner.
Greer could move, but it wasn't like a designed run situation most of the time. And D'Eriq King's a pretty good passer. So it wouldn't surprise me tonight they open it up a little bit. Same goes for Tulane, actually, because Tulane so far has not had to really open up yet. Because against Auburn, they were kind of able to play their offense for the majority of the game. And they meant to go 50-50 this year. Even though Willie Fritz, who beat Florida Georgia Southern, is their coach, he wanted to move away a little bit from that. And they have been running that for a few years, more of like just the spread option now. But McMillan can throw, and I actually really like Tulane here. So
yeah, I'll call you, I'll call you on that. I think Tulane's gonna. I don't think it'll be a little more decisive than what you think. I think it'll be like 31-20. I think it'll be double digits. So on to Friday night, Utah heads to LA to battle USC. The Utes are a 4-point favorite, which is not surprising. I thought Utah might be a little bit heavier of a favorite in this going in, but
yeah, me too.
And it's not like USC has home field advantage. The Coliseum is never sold out anymore.
I like Utah by a landslide. I think USC is going to have a sadness hangover after BYU, and I'm not sure they're going to be able. If they couldn't run the air raid they want to run against BYU, they're not going to run against Utah.
And
Utah big.
And I think Zach Moss is going to have another game. I think he goes for over $150.
Yeah,
which is going to be great for me because he's my fantasy running back. So yeah, I agree. I think Utah by 3 scores.
Maybe not that much, but handily.
It won't be in doubt at any point.
38-21. That's 3 scores, actually. So
it
yeah,
is.
You're right.
So on to Saturday's slate, and we'll start with Florida. Florida, 9th ranked in the country, hosts Tennessee. The Gators are a 14-point favorite, and I like this line. I think it's
about right.
I think it's about right, too. I think Florida covers, but it all depends, I think, on how the Gators start.
I have a feeling they don't, but I just kind of always have that feeling with them. So I don't think Florida loses. Really, I can't see a way that happens.
There is no feasible path that I can see unless we just unless the offense implodes, that Florida loses this game, because Florida is better than Tennessee at literally every single position except maybe kicker.
Coaching, better. Florida's got them on coaching.
By a mile.
And will to live. I feel like Tennessee players barely even want to play anymore.
They don't give a damn about playing right now, it seems like.
Because, I mean, that score looked pretty against Chattanooga, but they didn't play pretty.
And this is the first time they'll be away from Knoxville. They haven't played a road game yet.
No. I hope it's not. I hope it's a fun game to be at, and I'm not biting my nails in the fourth quarter. That'd be nice.
Yeah, I think Florida wins like 38-14.
I would like that. That'd be nice.
I would take that, and I genuinely think that's what's going to happen. Moving on to probably the second or third best game of the day. Number 11 Michigan goes to number 13 Wisconsin. Badgers are a 3.5-point favorite, and I think Wisconsin's going to very easily cover here.
Oh yeah, I like Wisconsin big here too.
Jonathan Taylor's
Michigan has done
game.
nothing to show me that their offense is new and improved, and the last team you want to be facing is the last team in the country to not have allowed a point.
Yeah, Wisconsin is filthy.
Yeah, 110 to nothing.
It's 10. It's 110.
It's 110.
Yeah.
110 nothing in 2 games.
Yeah, and then obviously Jonathan Taylor is going to rush for 2,000 yards again. And
Jack Cohn's actually a pretty good quarterback. Quintez Cephas is a good wide receiver.
And the thing that's really fun about Jonathan Taylor this year is that they're using him in the passing game.
Yeah, that's going to help his draft stock even more than it was already helped us by his running ability.
Yeah, he's going to be a first-round pick. And I think Wisconsin wins by 10.
I mean 27-20, 27-17.
I'll take that, yeah.
I really don't see Michigan scoring enough.
I don't either. I don't think they can drive up and down the field enough on Wisconsin to stay in it. In their conference matchup, number 23 Cal heads to Oxford to battle Ole Miss. And despite Cal being ranked, Ole Miss is a 2.5-point favorite here, which is kind of surprising.
I don't understand. Ole Miss, it took them 3 3/4 quarters to put away Southeast Louisiana last week. I like Cal. The only thing that might mess them up is the time change.
Yeah, because it's going to be like
noon game.
Yeah, so it'd be like a 9 a.m. start their time.
9 a.m. their time.
There's going to be no point scored, dude. This is going to be like 20 13, 20
That's
to 10.
every Cal game. You're not really going off the wall here. So I agree.
Yeah,
like
no.
20 to 17. Cal doesn't put anybody away, but
You can't score on them.
I don't. Yeah, they don't allow points. So I like Cal.
So far, we're on the same page here. Michigan State heads to Northwestern. Michigan State's a 9-point favorite, but the over/under is what's hilarious. 38 is the over/under.
You can honestly take the 8 off 3. That wouldn't have been too far off for the Arizona State game.
That's it. There, I honestly, I take the under here.
I'm almost excited to watch it.
Just to see like how few points it's or how bad the offense is.
Northwestern looks god awful, and it took them almost 4 quarters to pull away from UNLV. And Michigan State, we spoke about. I think Michigan State wins just because I think this is like a battle of the cripples. Cripple fight, South Park. You ever watch that one?
I don't think I've seen that episode.
I think Michigan State's Timmy. I think they come out on top.
But what? What's your score prediction?
14-10.
Ooh.
Seriously.
I was going to say
14-10.
13-10, but
Yeah.
I like Michigan State too, just because Northwestern is a dumpster fire.
Yeah, cripple fight.
So the CBS game for the SEC tomorrow, this is gonna be fun. Number 8 Auburn goes to number 17 Texas A&M. The Aggies are a 3.5-point favorite, and these might be the two of probably the 3 best defensive fronts in the SEC, and maybe even all of college football going at it.
Yeah, I'm excited for this.
This is gonna be a lot of fun, and this is Bo Nix's. I think this is real first true test because Oregon, it was a neutral site. You're not, and it is a majority Auburn crowd, and you're not facing the same front 7 that you're going to be on the road in College Station against an A&M team that is looking to prove something.
I think it's going to be a bit of an Auburn, especially Bo Nix, come to Jesus moment. I like A&M here. I think they need to bounce back. I think they know that if they lose this game, they're staring down the barrel of what will likely be a very long season. Maybe even like a 6-6 type season.
This is one of their more winnable games right now.
Maybe not more winnable, but it would hurt to lose, especially at home to a true freshman quarterback. I think Mon's experience wins the day here. And I think probably a little lower scoring than people expect. I think 24-13, 24-17.
I'm thinking about the same. I don't think there's going to be a lot of points in this game.
Watch it explode, but I like A&M.
Let me ask you this, though. Since we're Florida fans, would you rather have Auburn lose this game and go into playing us with 1 loss or be undefeated going in?
Just from, easier to beat them?
I mean, I think regardless, I don't. If they beat Texas A&M, it'll prove that Nix can go into a hostile environment and get the job done. But at the same time, though, if they're undefeated going in, I mean, it's kind of a better look for us.
Yeah, but I'd rather be demoralized, so...
Because winning against Auburn is going to look good, I think, no matter what.
Yeah. I'm impartial on that one.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on that as well. A game we already talked about a bit briefly. UCF goes to Pitt. The Golden Knights are an 11-point favorite. I don't think they'll cover, but I think they'll win.
Pitt won't score enough.
Yeah, I agree. Simple as that.
Simply, yeah.
I'm thinking like 27-20.
I think Pittsburgh's lucky if they get to 20. That UCF defense is fast.
They have a lot of speed. And one thing that's about UCF, and you may have been there when this point was made. I forget who said it, but UCF basically recruits guys that have Power 5 speed. They just lack size. That's it. Like when they're recruited,
they fly around,
and you put on some weight when you're there. You
tackle well too.
Yes, they're very well coached, and I like UCF here, but I guess I don't think they cover. So
that's fair.
So moving out west, your hot take of the week: number 22 Washington goes to BYU. The Huskies are a 6.5-point favorite, and Washington struggled on the road against Cal. Kind of a similar defense to BYU. They got a little stout, gritty defense.
That was a weird game. It started at 1:30 our time because of lightning delays, so it ended at 4:30 our time, which is 1:30 their time, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a weird game. When we do our pick pool, I might not even pick BYU. It just sounded good on the spur of the moment. I do think Zach Wilson's for real, though, and I would like them to open him up a little bit more. But Jacob Eason's been very effective. I think these two teams are more evenly matched than people are giving them credit for.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I'll take BYU just on the upset.
I'm still going to take Washington just because I think offensively there'll be too much for BYU to handle. And I don't think that the momentum they got last week from beating Hawaii I think will carry over. And I think they'll cover as well. I think it'll be like 30-23, 30-20.
I can see something like that.
Moving out down to TCU, the Horned Frogs host SMU. The battle of undefeated teams, which is kind of interesting.
TCU shouldn't be ranked.
I think it's premature for them to be in the top 25 as well.
Yeah, I mean, they've already had a bye week, and their wins are against Pine Bluff and a Sindelar-less Purdue, which is basically like cutting a quarterback's right leg off because some Lambert kid I've never heard of started for Purdue and wasn't good. That being said, I like TCU here. They handled SMU on the road last year. I do think this is a way better SMU team than we're accustomed to.
Yeah, no, I mean, they handled North Texas.
They lit up North Texas. Yeah. And they also have a decent road win against Arkansas State, and they beat who did they beat last week?
I forget. It wasn't a total nobody.
They beat Texas State 47-17.
Okay, so that's a team that Texas A&M played to a similar score. Not as Texas State didn't score as much on TAMU, but offensively comparable.
Yeah. I think TCU's defense is legitimate, though.
Gary Patterson always has a pretty solid defense.
Always. So I like TCU at home here.
They're 9.5-point favorite. You think they'll cover?
Around 10.
10?
Yeah.
I'll agree with that.
I can see it being a bad beat. Someone gets a garbage touchdown or something like that.
Moving to the ACC, Louisville goes to Florida State. The Noles are a 6.5-point favorite, and I know Florida State lost to UVA in really horrible fashion.
Bewildering
last
fashion.
week. And there were some signs of life for FSU, I'd say, on the road in Charlottesville. And even against Boise State, their offense flashed some explosiveness. Florida State's 1-2, but I think they're a little bit better than that record indicates.
I also think they're more talented than Louisville, and they beat Louisville last year. Granted, that was a really, really bad Louisville team. Louisville had no business losing. But I don't know. I'm torn here just because I think that FSU, like you said, better than their record. But their coaching is so bad. It's horrific.
They're so undisciplined.
The fact that Virginia gave them, 5 or 6 opportunities to score at the end of that game, and they found a way to not, and then rushed a wildcat formation with Akers instead of spiking the ball on 1st and goal, and let the clock run out. It's just odd. And Louisville, I think, is leagues better coached than FSU. But I don't know. This would be a great statement win for Louisville, though.
Yeah, if Louisville can go down and knock off Florida State, I mean, I think they'll make a bowl if they. For
that
sure.
That would put them in a really good position at 3-1.
I think Florida. It pains me to say I think Florida State will get the job done.
I agree,
but it'll be tight. It'll be entertaining. That's for sure. Kind of a game that UNC really has to be careful of. They host Appalachian State in Chapel Hill. UNC is only a 3-point favorite, and for good reason.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. That's very respectful to Appalachian State and what they've built. That being said, I like UNC to cover.
I think UNC's at the end of the day, just their talent's going to get it done. I haven't watched App State play at all this year, so I can't.
They look the same. They look the exact same.
They're just so well coached.
Because Drinkwitz, basically, he was the OC at NC State and ran a fairly pass-heavy scheme. But I think he likes the talent they had under Satterfield. He mentioned before the season that he really wasn't going to change a whole lot. And he hasn't. Zach Thomas, I think, has 330 passing yards in 2 games. Darrington Evans is averaging 10 a rush.
The typical App State,
torch to opponents. But I do think App State finally gets somebody. And if they're going to get somebody, it's going to be UNC.
Yeah, it's a very winnable game for App State.
It is.
Yeah.
No one would be shocked, I don't think.
And honestly, it would be a pretty good bounce-back win for UNC after the way the game against Wake Forest last week ended.
Yeah, and the ACC basically screwed them. Not that it probably would have really mattered, but...
A play's a play.
A play's a play.
I mean, this is an extreme example, but obviously that happened in the Iron Bowl on kick 6.
Yeah.
They added a second back, and look what happened. obviously, like I said, it's an extreme example, but, one play is a play, and they were down by 6, so they still could have, pulled it out. To the SEC, Kentucky goes to Mississippi State, and this line is asinine, in my opinion. Mississippi State's a 6.5-point favorite. If I bet, I am taking Kentucky
straight up.
Straight up.
Yeah, I'm taking Kentucky
here.
straight up. Here.
I
think Sawyer Smith is competent enough to win. Miss State really didn't look convincing to me against Kansas State at all. And Garrett Schrader might be starting. And he looked okay. But if Tommy Stevens is even a little injured, he's a better passer than Schrader,
right,
from what I saw. And I think Kentucky's probably better than Kansas State.
I would agree.
Or at least they're even.
Kentucky's front seven is elite.
Well, their offensive line's a bunch of hams.
Oh, they had the best offensive line in the SEC. Them or Georgia. But they play so well as a unit. And with Smoke and Rose in the backfield, I mean, that's...
Who they've utilized more, actually.
I agree. They did not run the ball nearly enough against Florida.
No, they didn't.
Especially late in the game.
They got stuffed a couple times and seemed to get timid.
The Florida's front seven kind of stiffened a little bit, too. David Reese had a
16
ball
tackles.
game. 13 solo. I mean, those are unreal numbers, but...
I'll take Kentucky straight up in a revenge game here.
Not
revenge, but bounce back.
I agree. I think they beat Miss State. That's straight up as well. Staying in the SEC, South Carolina goes to Missouri. Missouri's a 9.5-point favorite. This game would be fun. I think this game has the potential to potentially be a little bit explosive.
If Mizzou doesn't shoot themselves in the foot, I think they win by 13 or 14 points. But they lost to Wyoming because they couldn't get out of their own way. And since then, they've had a bunch of non-offensive scores that I think kind of belie how mediocre they've actually been on offense. Because if you look at the SEMO game they played, they won 50-0 last Saturday, but they had a punt return, at least one pick six, and then I don't think they broke 400 yards of offense, or if they did, it was tight. And then against West Virginia, they won 38-7, but only had like 340 yards. So I don't think that's very sustainable full-time SEC schedule.
And South Carolina showed some grit last week. Their front four, they have a very good front four,
and they also have nice skill guys.
Yeah,
they recruited really well at the wide receiver position,
and tight ends too. Their tight ends are very good in the passing game.
That being said, I like Mizzou here.
I do too. I don't know if they'll cover at 9.5. I'm thinking maybe like 30-23.
Yeah, and if South Carolina loses, I don't think they're going bowling this year.
Because the rest of their schedule is just way too tough.
That puts them at 1-3. They have to close 5-2, or 5-3,
and they still play Florida, Clemson, Georgia, Kentucky. Right there is 4 games.
Yeah, right there's 4
that you can't lose, and they'll probably lose all 4 of those games.
Yeah.
To the Big 12, and this game's gonna be fun. We talked about it.
This will be a shootout. I have full confidence.
Yeah, Oklahoma State goes to number 12, Texas. Texas is a 6-point favorite, but you mentioned earlier Oklahoma State's beaten Texas 3 or 4 last years in a row. Beat them last year in Stillwater.
And that was not a great Oklahoma State team.
No, that was a very subpar.
7-6.
Yeah. And I'm going to take Texas, but I'm not going to be surprised if and when Oklahoma State pulls this off.
No, honestly, this would be my least surprising against the line of the week. I could very easily see Oklahoma State winning this game. They're just well coached. They're very, very talented and athletic this year. They were actually losing at halftime to Tulsa.
They blew a lead. They were like what?
They were up like 20-7, then allowed 14 points, and then shut them out in the second half. But I think Tulsa's actually a bowl team this year. I don't know. I'm going to pick Texas just because Sam Ehlinger factor. I think he's for real, but I'm excited.
What is? I didn't even find the over under for this game. I'm gonna
probably near 60.
Let's see here. Can you probably pull it up faster than I can?
Move on to the next game and I'll find it.
Yeah, we'll move on. And so the The big one of the week now, number 7 Notre Dame goes to number 3 Georgia. And despite this being a top 10 matchup, Georgia is a 14.5-point favorite. And I was listening earlier to another podcast, and the first half line is Georgia -7.
Wow.
Which, that's free money.
I think they're going to blow the doors off Notre Dame.
I agree. I think Notre Dame is weak defensively, and Ian Book is going to be able to get nowhere against Georgia's front seven. And I think this is going to be ugly and ugly early.
42-20, 42-17.
Yeah, I think so. Georgia will easily cover, I think.
The over-under on Oklahoma State, Texas is 73.
I might take the over.
I'm going to go with the under. The predicted score, according to OddsShark, is 37-33, which I like.
Okay, yeah. So that's 70. Yeah, I don't know.
Sounds about right.
It'll be fun, though. That's going to be... Offense is going to be that entire game. But both of us have Georgia easily over Notre Dame. Notre Dame has never... Those guys have never played an environment like Sanford Stadium. That's going to be stupid.
At night.
It's going to be stupid there.
Yeah.
They're talking like the bridge in Athens might collapse with everyone there. Gonna move out west now to the nightcap. Colorado goes to number 24, Arizona State. The Sun Devils are a 7.5-point favorite. There's not gonna be a whole lot of points.
No,
in
if
this
Colorado
game.
had actually beaten Air Force, I probably would have picked them here. But that loss, I remember talking about this on one of the last pods, this Colorado team didn't feel like the team that would lose that kind of game. And they did.
They did, yeah.
So now I'm kind of feeling betrayed by them. And a little bit back to square one. And maybe this is going to be a little bit longer of a year than I think we initially thought. So I'm going to take Arizona State, like you said, low scoring, 20-10, 24-17, something like that.
Yeah, I'd say in that ballpark, too. I like Arizona State, too.
If anybody breaks 27, I think Colorado wins.
Okay. So is that the ceiling, then, for Arizona State?
I simply cannot see Arizona State scoring that many points.
And just Colorado has some weapons that, if they get loose...
Yeah, big plays. You know, Benjamin's been kind of bottled up on the Arizona State end, but it's hard to bottle up Laviska Shenault for any length of time.
It's just impossible. I mean,
But Laviska Shenault had a huge game against Air Force, and they still lost.
So, read into that what you will. And the final game that we're going to talk about, pretty good Mountain West game between Utah State and San Diego State. Utah State's a 4.5-point favorite, but San Diego State looked pretty respectable through 3 games.
They're not scoring very well. Their defense looks fine, but they're like very mediocre 3-0. Just because I think that UCLA is truly awful, and they won 6-0 in their first game against Weber. I like Utah State here.
I would agree.
Off a bye too.
Jordan Love's gonna have a good game. I think he's the difference.
San Diego State, I think, can be thrown on a little bit, and they were last year. Towards the end of the year, they were getting torched. So I like Utah State, like 30-23, something like that.
Gosh, we had it the same. There was like no difference in any of us.
No, I know this is a crazy week for picks, so.
And I think we're just both on the same page here. But
worth noting, the pick pool that we do has like 10 more games in this.
Yeah,
so we're bound to differ at some point.
Yeah, we'll update you on that tally after this coming weekend. And
get my ass kicked.
Yeah, he's Cameron's not doing so hot.
A little too bold.
Yeah, you stuck with Texas after I
shouldn't have done that.
But that'll do it for our 5th episode of the Bird and the Bear podcast, and we'll be at the Tennessee-Florida game, so we'll be able to catch most of the later action.
Oh, yeah.
And aside from...
We'll miss Michigan, Wisconsin, unfortunately, but...
Hey, the Wi-Fi in the swamp, though,
the Wi-Fi in the swamp's
it's
actually
fantastic.
That's funny.
It's funny because Saturdays Down South actually mentioned that, how good the Wi-Fi was in the
great.
swamp.
You can stream. It's ridiculous.
We were in there for the UT Martin game. We were streaming LSU Texas with pretty 1080p quality.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. So that'll do it for us here. For Cameron Carriglio, I'm Michael Knauff. We will see you next week for the next edition of the Bird and the Bear podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Bird and the Bear CFB and give all of our podcasts a listen to this point. We'll see you next time. Have a good night.